welcome to the Washington Outsiders series on human rights and environment. Today's topic is quite timely and relevant. We've seen protests break out last week, first starting in Ahvaz and later on breaking out in other parts of Iran, particularly in the peripheral areas um, populated uh, by Azerbaijanis who comprise a significant portion of the population. With us today, we have a team of experts who will discuss the real reason for what's going on. Are these protests merely about the water crisis, the drought that is plaguing Iran and surrounding areas? Or are the policies behind the water crisis really to blame, and particularly the discrimination that caused the Iranian regime to divert water from many of these areas? With us today, Dr. Frank Musma, who recently joined the Washington Outsider, is the director of the Middle East section. He will discuss the water related issues in the Middle East in general, and later on we will turn to the specifics of what's going on. But our focus today is going to be more on the regime policies than on the details of the environment crisis. Rahim Hamid, who is a researcher at the Rontash Studies Center, will actually be hosting a panel specifically focused on the water crisis on August 7th with the center. Abdulrahman Khete, a PhD candidate in international law and human rights, will discuss the legal issues and the human rights issues behind the situation. With us also today is Neji Jalali Terani, an Iranian American scholar and Middle East researcher, who will discuss the policies of discrimination and oppression from the point of view not of a non Persian, like the Ahwazi Arabs and the Azerbaijanis, but of somebody from the from a more mainstream perspective that is more frequently reflected in the Western media, and we want to hear what he has to say. Later on, Mr. Karim Dahami, a human rights activist from London who specializes in Ahvaz issues, may be joining us as well. Um, and we were also supposed to have a researcher, I'm sorry, the director of the Gunas TV, Dr. Obali, um, but he may be running late as well. Gunas TV is an Azerbaijani station based in the United States. We will start with Dr. Musmar, who will give us a brief overview of the water-related issues in the region and the water crisis plaguing the Middle East. And following the end of everyone's remarks, we will have a Q&A section moderated by me, and I am the editor-in-chief of the Washington Outsider. My name is Irina Tsukaman, and I'm looking forward to this event. Dr. Musmer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Irina. I'll just talk briefly, then I'll leave the space for the experts to tell us more about the subject. In the last decade, less water has been reaching the Tigris in Iraq from the Iranian side due to the building of a series of dams on the tributary rivers of the Tigris, such as the Little Zab, Karsh, Zaran, Alwand, and Diyala, which lessen the downstream Iraqi share, affecting Iraq's southern provinces. According to a Human Rights Watch report, 12 dams were built on the Sirvan River that feeds the Diyala tributary river between 2001 and 2019, and 5 dams were built on the Karsh tributary river between 2011 and 2017. Moreover, a giant dam called Vand was constructed on the current tributary river that supplies 75% of Basra's water consumption in 2012, diminishing the historical marshlands in southern Iraq and the Shat al-Arab River. The Mesopotamian marshes wetland that was once the largest ecosystem in western Eurasia is shrinking despite restoration efforts. The drainage of the marshes, along with the dam structures, causes severe salinization in rivers, including the Karen. Iranian extracts water from this river and discharges harmful water into the Shat al Arab, which further increases salinity. In northern Iraq, the Kurdistan Regional Government (KRG) and the spokesperson for Iraq's Ministry of Water Resources have accused Iran of diverting the Tigris in the north to feed Lake Armia, causing a reported 80% drop in the water level in the Little Zab, by which violating international law which prohibits harmful disruptions in natural river flows. The Kurdistan regional government warned that the diversion could take away 100% of drinking water in parts of Iraq's Kurdistan, deplete its agricultural resources, harm farmlands, wildlife, tourism, fishing projects, and a major catastrophe in the next few years precipitate mass human migration. On the other hand, in the Al Ahwaz region located south and southwestern Iran, Iran's drought policies are an ethnic cleansing campaign against the Ahwazi people, the indigenous Arab people inhabiting Ahwaz, targeting their water supplies to starve their lands and coerce their immigration. The Iranian damming and diversion projects blocked the region's five main rivers that once irrigated the rich alluvial plains. The massive reduction in water flow from the two largest rivers, the Karkha and Karun, has had devastating effects on Ahwaz, causing desertification and water shortage, fire, the death of thousands of animals, including fish, cattle, and buffaloes, that is making life unbearable for nearly 3 million of Ahwazi population, particularly in the southern Ahwaz cities of Abadan, Muhammara, and Falahiyah. Accordingly, protests erupted in the Ahwaz region on the 10th of July. However, the Iranian regime forces responded by brutal attacks using tanks, armored vehicles, and hundreds of heavily armed troops and militiamen on civilians protesters, arresting hundreds, injuring dozens, and killing nine protesters in violation to Comment Number 37 of the United Nations Human Rights. The United Nations Human Rights Committee stated in its General Comment Number 37 that firearms are not an appropriate tool for the policing of assemblies and must never be used simply to disperse an assembly. Any use of firearms by law enforcement officials in the context of assemblies must be limited to a targeted individuals in circumstances in which it's strictly necessary to confront imminent threat or death or serious injury. Despite the outrage, the response by the Arab states, the international community, and media reports has been limited. Arab countries suffered from the Iranian regime trying to destabilize the whole region, transferring terrorists to Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Syria, and Lebanon. However, they failed to support their ancestors in Ahwaz. Back to you, Irina.
Thank you so much, Dr. Musma. Next, we will give the floor to Rahim to give us some perspectives from on the ground in Ahvaz right now. What is actually happening? How did this all start? Why at this time? And please tell us in terms of the actual what is happening with the activists, with the protests. What are they doing? What happens to the people who are getting arrested? How many have gotten arrested? The details that we can't really get from the mainstream media here.
Well, Ahwazi people have been protesting in the majority of the Ahwazi Arab populated cities since July 14, and unfortunately, so far, Around 9 protesters confirmed shot dead by Iranian security forces. The point that I want to also issue to say is the media and the analysts portray the protests as a riot in response to water shortages and the mismanagement. However, it's not a natural drought, it's a man-made water crisis in Ahwaz that just was a trigger that provoked the Ahwazi people to protest against the structural grievances and inequalities that they are suffering for years. And all the evidence show that it's not merely about water. And the root cause of the problem is forced displacement, Persian settlement, and also the systematic racism practiced against the Ahwazi Arab people of approximately 8 million people who are inhabiting in 4 provinces south of Ilam, Khuzestan, Bushehr, and Hormozgan province. Ignoring the structural problem will not actually allow us to learn the real causes of the problem. You might know that Ahwaz region has 6 rivers. The well-known like Karun, Karkha, Dez, Jarrahi, and Zohre. So normally this region should be impacted less in compared to other central provinces in terms of water shortages. However, Ahwazi people, despite having all these water rivers, they suffer disproportionately due to the excessive damming and the water diversion program of Karun, to the water lacking and arid central provinces in Iran, such as Kerman, Yaz, and Isfahan. And even the other point is even the Iranian media official admit that the diversion of Karun water wasn't only for drinking usage, but mainly for industrial purposes to these 3 provinces in Iran. And the oil and the gas also in Ahwaz region plays an important role in this man-made problem. You might know that Iran, in its pursuit of oil exploration, has committed this ecocide, contributed to ethnic cleansing campaign against the Ahwazi people. The water supply remains very essential for the survival of the Ahwazis, who largely sustain themselves of agriculture in their lands. Iran, as I said, has built excessive dams, leveraging them as a political weapon to starve the Ahwazis of their pivotal water supply and to coerce their immigration. While Iran claimed that these dams are built to preempt winterly floods, they have been used in some areas to flood Ahwazi villages and rural communities, destroying their crops during the winter. And in summer, to starve the water supply, and many people have been depopulated and displaced from the rural communities, moving to Ahwazi urban areas and mainstream Iranian cities, where they become marginalized and living in ghettos and in poverty. So, as I said, the water was a trigger to this protest. The people are protesting against the systematic racism, the relentless Iranian policy that aimed to coerce the Ahwazi people to immigrate from their lands in order to change the demographic makeup of Ahwaz in favor of non-Ahwazi indigenous people, especially Persian, who come as a settler to work in oil and gas companies, while Iran denies Arabs working in the oil companies, and the only source of living was agriculture, and Iran, by drying out the rivers, destroyed this problem. So people have no way to make a living. That's why they desperately took to street and protesting against Iran ethnic oppression. This is I have for right now. Also, in terms of the arrest, we have around 400 people have been arrested in different cities and areas in Ahwaz. Mostly they are underage, between 12 to 16, and we just hope that Amnesty and international community to take a note of this disproportionate number of the arrest. It's not the first time. In 2019, Iran did the same, but unfortunately, this oppression is not covered effectively in the media. So the Ahwazi people are kind of hammered inside and outside because of the lack of interest in covering their issue in a way that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rahim. We'll be back to questions about the ongoing developments. In the meantime, I'd like to turn to Abdurrahman Hete, who will comment on the human rights and legal aspects of the current situation, how the international law looks on these events, and what are the developments in the international area, as well as the challenges.
Thank you very much. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to cover the historical racist policies and that led to the current situation. So to start with, I can say that the water crisis in Ahwaz results from many racist policies that have been in place for decades, both under the former monarchy regime and the current Islamic Republic. So confiscating actually Ahwazi land and forcing the local Arabs to migrate to other parts of Iran is the underlying objective behind drying up Ahwazi rivers and wetland. The current situation is merely a manifestation of many decades of historical wrongs that the Ahwazis have been subjected to as a result of racist and oppressive policies engineered to deny them their basic human rights. I will use this time here to outline and describe the historical context in which this water shortage has occurred as a way of demonstrating that racism, discrimination, and the removal of human rights has been at the forefront of the Ahwazi experience for generations. I will briefly shed light on the systematic racist practices of changing the ownership of Ahwazi land in favor of the Iranian state. All current racist policies against Ahwazis are inherited from the former monarchy regime. After the military occupation of Ahwaz in 1925, Reza Shah, the new king in Persia, declared Ahwazi land as princely land and allowed the government to dispossess and distribute lands belonging to Arabs to whomever desired. As a result, a government rent-based feudalism in Ahwaz was created, and few feudal lords representing the government collected 2/3 of the harvest from the farmers. The wealth accumulated through feudalism was transferred to Tehran and did not benefit the local economy. In 1963, Mohammad Reza Shah introduced the White Revolution in Iran. One of the elements of the White Revolution was land reform. Land reform forced many farmers into state-run farm corporations that gave priority to the Persian and foreign agriculture companies and failed to protect the indigenous right to land. And the Ahwazi farmers who could not pay their debt due to the land reform lost their farms. It resulted in a massive exodus from the affected villages to cities in search of work. It caused a decline in agricultural production and livestock and an increase in unemployment rates among Ahwazis. Also in 1968, the Ministry of Water and Power confiscated the best fertile and agricultural lands around the Des River under the pretext that the Arab farmers did not use modern agriculture methods. The government used those lands for sugarcane production that contributed to environmental pollution and shortage of water. It also led to the eviction of thousands of Arab farmers and the rapid depopulation of Arab villages. The government's agri-industry projects facilitated the organized immigration of workers from other Iranian provinces to change the demography of Ahwaz. It led to confiscation of more land and building residential towns to accommodate the new arrivals on the confiscated lands of Arabs. The construction of dams on the Ahwazi rivers was part of the land reform. The barriers have become a real threat to the way of life of Ahwazi farmers. In the past years, the Iranian authorities deliberately opened the gates of dams, especially during harvest times, to flood their crops, to force them to leave their land. The dams led to scarcity and salinity of water. Some rivers that once flowed with water and were the source of livelihood have become dry. In some areas, farmers were banned from cultivating rice because of water scarcity. In some villages, the locals have to dig wells in the middle of the dry rivers for drinking water. So the current Ahwazi water crisis requires intervention from the international community to hold the Iranian state accountable for these human rights violations. It is more important than ever to consider the plight of the Ahwazi people. And I hope that my research pointing to possible avenues towards self-determination might assist future generations from being victimized in this regard. That's it for me, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. And of course, we'll be back with more questions and discussion about this issue. Right now, I'd like to turn to Ahmed Abali, the director of Gnas TV, to discuss the situation concerning the Azerbaijani or Azerbaijani Turkic people living in Iran, and the fact that the protests have now spread to the areas where they live, and they comprise, from what I understand, actually the majority of Iranian population right now. What is going on? Why have they joined the protests at this time?
Well, thank you, Rina. My apology for being late due to unforeseen circumstances. I almost didn't make to the office, and I had to make a U-turn, come back and join you from my house. What happened in Ahwaz region to our Arab friends is actually very similar to what is happening to us. We have sort of similar problems. Institutional discrimination against non-Persians in Iran is well documented, and some of our friends and panel members did go into that effectively. And we also have our own environmental problem in Lake Urmia, which is the second largest salt lake in the world, that has been neglected, we believe purposely, because if it dries up completely, which is almost there, then the entire South Azerbaijan will have to evacuate. The population will have to evacuate the region. And based on United Nations assessment, up to 72 million people will negatively be affected by dryness of the lake, as the lake is salt lake, heavily salted, and with the dry season coming up in upcoming years. The salt will be moved by the big, large winds to the neighboring provinces, and this will force our population to basically escape the onslaught of salt and wind. In addition to that, mostly the environmental issue that we have is not just Lake Urmia, but also in other areas like mining, copper mining, and glass factories that environmentally poisoned the region up to a point where thousands of people have lost their cultivation rights and land. But this is not all. Our Azerbaijanis comprise about 35% of the population in Iran. That comes to over 30 million people in general. And most of Azerbaijanis live outside historic Azerbaijani land because they've been forced to a so-called economic migration to make money, to make a living. They have to move to different areas of the country, specifically to central part of the country that is Persian land. So we have our grievances economically and environmentally. Our language is banned, our culture is banned in schools and official communications. So overall, there is a systematic discrimination against us as well. So when we saw what is happening in Ahvaz, we feel it because we are a victim as well. When the uprising started in Ahvaz, all of our organizations and activists from within the country and the organizations, parties that operate outside the country, as it is illegal within Iran to be officially part of any non-governmental parties. We gathered, we had a meeting on Friday, not last, but the Friday before. We supported Arab uprising with a very specific statement that called for continuation of the uprising, continuation of the protests. And we also, the next day, gathered again to ask for a protest within Azerbaijani cities in Iran. We came up with the following Tuesday evening. However, at the meeting, we realized that some monarchists, perhaps, or MEK members have called for meeting protests on the same day. So we delayed because we did not want to be part of their culture of taking over all these demonstrations. So we delayed our call for following Sunday due to Eid. We couldn't do it on Tuesday and Thursday. Friday was closed. It's a holiday, so we decided on Saturday. So we had a week ahead of us, and so did the government. So this also, in a way, was a test for us for our people versus Iranian government. They had a whole week to bring additional security forces from adjacent provinces to the region, to Azerbaijani regions. And within a whole week, especially the last evening, the night of the Friday night, actually, was important because we witnessed about additional 2,500 additional troops were brought in to Tabriz alone. Nevertheless, they could not prevent the demonstration from taking place. So this was great. The main slogans were Azerbaijan and Al-Ahvaz unity. They were calling for unity between Azerbaijanis and Ahvazi Arabs. Unfortunately, some of these slogans were misrepresented, intentionally mistranslated in Persian media, including a program that we witnessed on Iran International the other day. It was completely wrong, unethical. Nevertheless, it happened yesterday, actually. Sorry. And then another one of the slogans that people in Tabriz were shouting was was freedom. It was called Azatlık, Adalet, Milli Hukumat, meaning freedom, justice, and national government for Azerbaijan. They asked for formation of Azerbaijani national government on the streets. So this is exactly what we were expecting from our people, as Azerbaijanis openly called for at least a high form of federalism, or in most of the part of the region, they are calling for outright independence from Iran, because there is absolutely no hope that the central government and the opposition that are operating outside the country, that are possible replacement for current regime, they don't recognize any collective right for non-Persians in Iran. So most of our people are forced to ask for independence.
Thank you very much for that, and I'll actually be back to you with more questions related to these issues. But now the floor is to Mr. Mehdi Jalali Tehrani, and he can comment on the situation from his perspective. And I'm particularly interested. Both the Shah and now the Islamic Republic have used the divisions inside the population, exacerbating and playing and even creating new ways of dividing the people by ethnic and religious lines to create a situation that is easy to control and that prevents the collapse of the institutions and of the regime. And I'd like to hear how that has affected the nation as a whole, and the possibility of a collective response to the Islamic Republic, especially now general oppression.
Okay, thank you so much for invitation, dear Irina. And let me first have some disclaimer. I'm not American, I'm Persian Iranian, and not academic. I am activist, and I'm running a kind of like institution or center that is the only ethnically diverse group of Iranians together. Is more like a school of thought than an organization that we promote decentralization of power in Iran and federalism. So after I graduated from SIPA Columbia, I turned to Iranian community, and I was not in Persian language, English language institution, think tanks for a while. So I just focused on my Iranian people to basically change something about the regime and about the whole political structure in Iran. Then once I wanted to write a paper about what is the most threatening issue for Iranian national security, regardless of the regime. I never finished that paper, but I came to realization right when I started to apply my methodology that the ethnic issue in Iran is the first national security issue in Iran. And now we see the water crisis completely related to the ethnic crisis and ethnic issues. And something that I want to point out right now is not the behavior of the regime, suppression, discrimination, those kind of things, because Mr. Obali said well that this is an institutionalized discrimination since the Reza Shah's time. Is about 100 years old discrimination, both in a Persian nationalism and in Islamic Shia ideology. So, but now, especially after the protest of the Turk people in Azerbaijan, in solidarity with the Ahwazi people, I believe we see a much larger revolution in Iran. It's just the tip of ice right now. That is not, its agenda is not changing the regime. Its agenda is to be recognized by Persian nationalists, by Persian media, by Persian government, by Persian structure, by Persian hegemony. And this struggle is gonna last for a while. And we see a solidarity that never happened before. What happened yesterday and in Azerbaijan was definitely historic. Gives us a big sign that what's going on under skin of the Iranian population and ethnic issues. When you see, for example, something happens, uprising of Arab people, they don't say it in Persian language program media, they don't say it Arab uprising. They say it water crisis in Khuzestan. Khuzestan is the name that Pahlavi gave to the Arab Ahwazis province. So even now, opposition group, famous faces, celebrities, journalists, whoever you know as Iranian, journalists that appeared in different medias, English language medias, most of them basically they interpret the situation in the way they want, in the way they desire. Sometimes they give misinformation. For example, today, Miss Camelia Entekhabi-Far, the editor-in-chief of the Persian Independent, was in one of the Arab media's Arab channel, and he said that the Arab Ahwazis were, their slogan was kind of bring back the Shah and those kind of things at the this situation and the birthday of the late Shah. That's totally lying. So whatever the world watch about the Iran, you should consider that a lot of misinformation in it. And what happens right now is Persian medias that they are funded by Arab countries like Iran International, and they have a lot of money. They are very well funded. They just bring some celebrities, Persian celebrities, activists, human rights activists, so they have different titles, to describe what's going on in Ahvaz for Arab peoples, what's going on in Azerbaijan, in Tabriz for Turk people. They don't bring the Turk activists, they don't bring the Arab activists. Sometimes they just bring 1% that always repeated in their medias, but not real activists that they can basically explain what's going on in the region. And that's this kind of illusion is going on and on for a while. And now I see something is happening. We get to be seen that this kind of ethnic issue, what's going on about it in the future. But when I was in Berkeley studying political science, Mr. Nicholas Burns in the State Department called me and asked me about the situation in Iraq, Ayatollah Sistani, and the conflict between Shia and Sunni. And I said, Shia hate Sunnis much more than hate Jews or Christians. And he was totally surprised because he didn't know anything. And the Bush administration, Obama administration, Trump administration, Biden administration, they don't know anything about these kind of issues that's going on the skin of Iran, Iraq, and these conflicts. So this kind of ignorance is very dangerous for the future of the region, for the stability of the neighboring countries, Arab countries, for the stability of Israel. Because most of the, for example, about Israel, most of the Iranian Jews, they don't have any experience of Holocaust. In comparison, they had a relative good life in the Shah's time. So they don't have any experience of being real minority and suppressed by the majority of the people in Iran. So they, and at the same time, because they praise Cyrus the Great, so they think that the continuing the kingdom in Iran maybe is good for the future of Iran. Many of them are loyalists. Many of them ignoring the other minorities, especially ethnic minorities in Iran. And these tendencies basically gives us basically makes us misinformed about what's going on in Iran. And it's a very dangerous situation. I believe if we don't recognize the situation, if we don't find a solution to unify people with recognizing each other differences, we're gonna go to even civil war in the vacuum of power by the government, by the current government in maybe near future. That's now, for now is, yeah.
Thank you so much for providing this valuable perspective, and I will be sure to get back to the very important point and ask you some follow-up questions. Right now, I wanted to turn to Dr. Musmar and kind of discuss a little bit more in depth and before we get into more of the Iran and policies, Iran's mismanagement, and some of it deliberate and some of it just reckless mismanagement of water policies, has affected the region as well. It has affected Iraq. It has spread outwards. Iran has been blaming other countries and their climate conditions for the current drought. It has blamed Saudi Arabia and others for their own internal weather-related conditions that allegedly spread and caused this issue. But in reality, it's very clear that mismanagement of water policies is indeed a human factor in this situation. The Arab states have been supporting the protests in the media, but have been reluctant to engage otherwise, in part because of this tendency to have to accept blame for interference and so forth. At what point do they draw? When is the point to draw a line where their own interests are concerned and affected by Iran's actions, and where do you draw a balance between not being seen as pushing for any particular internal solutions in another country, but also trying to address the way that country affects their own lives, and also how the oppressive policies and not just the water policies are essentially a human rights issue, an issue that is not to be tolerated. And the fact that Iran is getting away with it is partly because everyone else is so concerned about being perceived, or being blamed for interfering. So I'd like to hear your perspective on this issue.
Okay, well, that's kind of like a big question, but has many dimensions. Mahdi, he mentioned a point about the Shiite and Sunni problem of Shiite and Sunni in the Middle East. Shiite, in my mind, I see more organized. Sunni are not. If when I talk Arabs, uh, actually even worse. So Iran has a project, and they've been working on that project, since the revolution. Um, and they are kind of like the source and the light for all Shiites in the region. And they've been reaching for all their arms in the region, from Iraq to Syria to Lebanon and Yemen. Arab countries, and if you want to say Arab Sunni, and of course there's some Shiite minorities within the Arab countries, but Arab countries not been watching what's going on for a long time to a point that now they are really facing a giant Iran, and they are not even acting. Basically, America lately, since Obama's time, trying to pull as much out from the Middle East, even though Mr. Trump pushed a little bit in, but most likely Biden is following Obama's policy, pulling out from the Middle East. This means there is more vacuum. So Arab Sunnis, if we want to say Arab Sunnis now, of course, I told you it's like a big question, so we're going to combine a little bit. So if we combine Arab and Sunnis together to face Iran, they need more support. They need to make like more coalitions in the area. Basically, what's left in the area as a power more than Israel. So Israel and Arabs has the same enemy, Iran. Now, if Arabs is going to go and look for Arabs the way Iran is looking for Shiites, of course they're going to have to go and look for the Ahwazi people. They are Arabs and they are ancestors. But so far they are not doing it because Arabs are not really able to do it. They don't have the ability to go and face Iran, not in the media. Now, you could talk about it all the time, but we don't see no actions. And so far, they even bar from even talking. So from that point, I don't think the Arab countries is going to do anything. I believe the Ahwazi people and our guests, like as elites in that subject, they could represent their crisis, and it is a crisis, a humanity crisis to the world. They're going to have to show what's going on. They're going to have to explain. But I'm sorry, I'm not with or against, but I don't think explaining that to Arabs, which is they already watch it and see it, I don't think they're going to benefit out of that.
But what is the weakness behind that response? Why aren't they willing to draw lines and say, okay, US is not being helpful, Israel, okay, they can do only so much, they can help us on some missions and so forth, but they can't, necessarily join us in every aspect of everything that happens. This is our responsibility. I understand that there are many internal divisions in the Arab world as well, but at the end of the day, this is the kind of existential threat on a variety of levels that threatens everybody and should make it easier to, at the very least, produce a coherent response. So what exactly is the block that's preventing them from really showing that they're willing to stand up to Iran at least? It kind of creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of being perceived as weak and weakening even further.
Okay, I'm sorry, like kind of missed the point. So the question is like why Arabs is not able to do
Yeah,
it?
what exactly is preventing them from doing it when it's at the point of an existential threat at this point, and the US is not going to come in and save them, and neither will Israel. It can help, but it can't single-handedly handle all issues. Where's their role in this? Why are they giving over the power to Iran in the region completely without even trying to really fight it? What do they expect to happen?
Well, I think Arabs for a long time, let's say Arab states in the Middle East, for a long time, they weren't watching exactly what Iran is doing. But Iran in general, it's been exporting its myth of, the Shiite Khorasan or whatever, in the Levant area, and then now stretching down south to Yemen and all that. Okay, now they are surprised that Iran is really there In the meantime, there is many Arabic countries that have minorities of Shiites. It doesn't mean that they are loyal to Iran, but most likely with experiences we see everywhere they are loyal to Iran. So they are way weak from inside to act. Second, they recognize that Iran passed them for a long time. So now, if you look like most of the talk in the Middle East and the Arab states lately, that they are trying just to convince the United States to stay and spend more time and hours and soldiers in the Middle East. They kind of fearing the United States movements lately of moving powers from area to area, and fearing the United States will keep the area vacant because they feel that they cannot face Iran. They have that feeling. Show me one stance of Arabs against Iran in reality, not talk. What they did since the Iranian Revolution up to now to stand in the front of Iraq.
Well, GCC was supposed to be a defense alliance against Iran, and clearly it has completely failed in its mission. So what's next?
Well, the defense alliances that I think what's left for him is just to join Israel and make a new sort of coalition. Business, trades, economy, whatever you name it. They're way behind, and they left behind. And I think the United States is preparing for that. It's creating the atmosphere for that. And if they're not really going after that, I think they're going to be left behind. I don't know how they're going to manage, but they're going to have to struggle to manage.
Right. I mean, for personal, I don't see it happening quite as soon as may be necessary because for other unrelated reasons. So that leaves the internal situation in Iran. And so now I'm going to get back to Rahim and ask him what exactly is happening in the moment. The Arab states are out of the picture for now. The propaganda machinery from the Iran perspective is underplaying the oppressive aspect of the situation. What's happening? What is the plan for the protest? What exactly is happening on the ground? Who is how is it being managed, and what's happening to the people being arrested? I've heard that a number have been already killed with live ammunition. There's been an internet outage to make it harder to organize. Over 100 people at least has been arrested. What's the latest development? Rahim, you're muted. You're muted. Unmute yourself. There we go.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
I was saying that the coverage of what's happening in Ahwaz is largely minimal. The Persian opposition group largely divided between two groups. I just want to explain this, and namely supporter of restoring the Pahlavi dynasty monarchist system and those Mujahideen Khalq or people of Mujahideen organization. Both have been reporting on Ahwazi people without acknowledging Ahwazi Arab identity or their history being repressed or by successive regime, with monarchists even claiming falsely that the Ahwazi people are protesting to demand the restoration of the Shah rule, even the U.S. administration, despite renewed of its assertion that human rights are a priority, haven't acknowledged the Ahwazi region situation. International media outlets also continue to avoid coverage of what exactly are happening there. It's not the water triggered the protest, but it's about the long decade of the ethnic oppression that the Ahwazi people are going through. Denial of jobs, deliberate destruction of their environment, relentless land confiscation of the Ahwazi farmer, exclusive Persian settlement, and the Persian media are adding kind of an assault to our plight. And these media even the international media, I mean, are influenced by lobbies who are working on the behalf of the regime. And they continue to pursue a policy in which Persian ethnic supremacy is used to impose on the other ethnic and religious group who live in Iranian territory, including Ahwazi people. So the Ahwazi people struggle is ignored by international community and the international media. You know, if you follow the protest, all the Ahwazi people protesters were chanting in Arabic. And they are stressing on their culture, linguistic preference, and even the land which the Ahwazi people reside in by saying, with the soul, with blood, we defend you, Ahwaz. But the Iranian opposition group keep fabricating the slogan and mistranslating it that, oh, these Ahwazi people are calling on the Shah to come back to Iran and rule the country. So the other problem, they refer to Ahwazi people as only Iranian people, and they remove the self-identification of the protester themselves, who view surely themselves as Ahwazi Arab and not Persian. As I said, the Ahwazi Arab protesters were chanting in Arabic, and they stressed their claim to their national ethnic identity. But it's really fabricated in the media. And so it's kind of frustrating us. But thanks to social media, thanks to networks like social media platform like Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, it's kind of help and to break this media blackout, and we try with this limited means that we have, we are trying to correct the coverage and to say that the Ahwazi people are protesting not only about the lack of the water and the intentional diversion of water from Ahwaz land, but the broader issue that remains unresolved is the multifaceted oppression, structural racism faced by the Ahwazi Arab population, which exceed all levels, including social, environmental, cultural, economic, and ethnic identification. This is what I have for now. And also in terms of the arrest, so many people have been arrested. We have people who are confirmed arrested between the age of 12 to 16, and they are, the Ahwazi prison are packed with many prisoners already. And Iran even doesn't have the Iran prison in Ahwaz region doesn't have this capacity to get a new prisoner. So probably this young and underage prisoner will be transferred to other areas in Iran. And will be mixed with dangerous prisoner who committed murder or sexual harassment, and it's a very dangerous situation. And I hope that the Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch take note of and to call on Iran and to take action, not merely by issuing a statement. Something effective should happen. I think the Biden administration should include this issue during the negotiation with Iran, and to emphasize on the release of the prisoner. Otherwise, it will be a huge problem for the families inside Ahwaz. Iran will exploit them by many ways to pressurize them. So basically, Amnesty and other human rights organizations should middle in and help in this regard. Thank you.
Thanks, Rahim. And do you know what exactly is the number of the people who have been arrested? Because during the last protests, they were accused of completely false charges and tortured and so forth. What's happening now? What are they saying about these?
I think according to human rights organization inside Ahwaz, 300 are confirmed arrested in various cities, mostly underage. We have also hundreds of wounded people, but they are feared and refuse to go to the hospital because it's happened in 2019. Many Ahwazi people have been protesting. Maybe you might remember that in Mahshur, and by their injuries and admission to the hospital personnel notified the intelligence services, and they came and took them to the detention, and they tortured to death. Some of them died there. So people have this experience and the trauma, and despite their critical situation, some of them are not going to the hospital. Iran was using Winchester rifle bullets against the people there. It was distributed and used by the Basiji militia. We have 9 people who have been killed. It is really interesting that those people who have been killed, they killed in the same style. They shot in the throat and in their forehead, and mostly by the snipers who were taking shelter on the buildings, as well as their indiscriminate shooting by the security forces. Iran also are not handing over the bodies of the protester. Some of them are buried without notification of their family. In addition to that, Iran also insisting on their families even to bring them on the TV, forcing them to say these people were instigated, were deceived by some agent or some people who were working in the favor of regional countries like Saudi Arabia, Israel, US. So they're trying to do the same story that they were repeating it during the last year in order to propagate their propaganda in the media that these protesters were incited by regional countries through media and something like that. So, the things that really is frustrating, as I said, is Persian media. Persian media, instead of taking this chance to remedy the huge disparity between the ethnic group and they come and to help Iran and assist Iran by fabricating the Ahwazi issue, by insisting on the fake name of Ahwaz region. Khuzestan is not our homeland name, it's an imposed Persian name. We will not submit to that. And the protesters will keep calling with soul and lives and blood, we defend you Ahwaz, which is a good reference and a clear message to the Persian opposition group. In addition to that, people Ahwazi desperately, when they saw Persian opposition group are fabricating and spreading lies about this, they came and raised the national Ahwazi flag, which is a very clear and powerful message to them that in Iran future, there is no place of centralization system. And they also called no Shah or no Mullah. Iran should be descended into a decentralization system if they want a true democracy. If they really believe in the principle of the human rights that they are bragging about, self-autonomy, self-determination is a part of this charter. So they keep contradicting themselves, and I see that the sad thing that the Western men who have kind of benefiting from Persian lobbies, they are keep appeasing them. They are keep turning eye to this a blind eye to this situation, and it's really a dangerous situation. And I hope that people like you, Irina, Mr. Frank, and Mr. Ubali and Mahdi, who was working for several years on this issue, and we have Mr. Abdurrahman Hatta, who is working on this issue. Maybe with other people help, maybe we can do something and to raise awareness in order to minimize this issue. Otherwise, we will have a bleak future.
Thank you so much, Rahim. And I'd like to actually follow up with Mr. Hete and to discuss the situation from a international human rights perspective. Thus far, we've had some pretty limited campaign from human rights or NGOs concerning the live ammunition used against the protesters, not to mention the underlying water-related crisis. Where are the environmentalist groups? Where, in Western countries? I don't mean just the Persian opposition. Where are the major human rights NGOs? Why the relative silence about this situation that's been ongoing for 2 weeks? And why this relatively limited coverage and kind of it being downplayed so completely? I mean, John Kerry, for instance, the U.S. Climate change envoy, who's been so charming with Zarif and all these guys, seems to have nothing to say on the issue of the man-made water crisis in Iran and surrounding areas. What's the response to this hypocrisy, this complete silence of people who go on about internal climate change related, mismanagement and regulations and so forth, but are putting no pressure on Iran over this?
Yeah, is it directed to me or?
Abdurrahman Hatta.
I mean, environmental pollution and the current situation, current crisis, environmental crisis in Ahwaz, it's actually a human rights issue and human rights problem that international community, particularly the United Nations human rights bodies, should consider and should address and should actually pay more attention to. And I mean, Iran is party to many of the international human rights treaties, such as International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. And it's under obligation to protect its people. Environmental pollution is part of the violation of the right to life. I mean, people's life and the way of life is affected, and they are losing their way of life, and they are losing their cattle. They don't have water to cultivate the crops and other things. So it's Ahwazi's life in danger now at this moment. But where are the United Nations bodies now? I don't know, but there is just one statement from the UN Human Rights Commissioner 4 or 5 days ago, condemning Iran of killing Ahwazi people and the ongoing water crisis that has been forever. So, I mean, through reading of the concluding observations and reports of many human rights bodies in the past, we can see that the issue of water shortages, diverting water to Persian provinces, and building of so many dams that prevent or bar Ahwazi people from exercising their right to life has been raised previously in many of the United Nations reports and concluding observations. And I think it's the issue is more political, and most of these bodies are looking for the hot kind of issues and topics, and it could be Ahwazi issue is not relevant to and doesn't interest so many of the international bodies, but I mean, it's their responsibilities. They are for everybody, and Iran is under obligation. It's not like Iran didn't sign any of these treaties, but it's part of these treaties, and international communities should hold Iran responsible for all these violations. I'm not sure about the policy of the United States administration at this moment, so I don't think I can comment on that. Thank you.
But what about human rights NGOs like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch and organizations that deal with the rights of prisoners and the environmental groups, private environmental groups outside the UN? What has been their response to this information and to the appeals from the Ahwazi and other human rights activists upon?
I mean, as I said, this issue has been raised not by only United Nations bodies, but other NGOs such as Amnesty International and various actually NGOs, even Human Rights Watch previously. And I mean, Amnesty International has issued 2 statements about the current situation, and but the thing is that these organizations need more connection, need Ahwazi people and other groups to connect with them and give them information. And unfortunately, the Ahwazi people have no voice in that regard. Unfortunately, we suffer from lack of strong organization, human rights organization that is organized and that is more focused on human rights issues in Ahwaz. So we lack that strong, let's say, strong human rights organization to raise our issue. We have guys in Ahwazi people working in different media outlet and raise the situation, but we don't have a kind of expert in the human rights issues to bring the awareness and the current issue to maybe international groups and media. And
so here's my question. A few years ago, Iran has staged a campaign of attempted assassination against Ahwazi leaders in Europe, following by a smear campaign accusing Ahwazis both inside and outside the country of being terrorists and so forth. So a few of the political leaders of the Ahwazi opposition in Europe have been arrested in those countries, and these legal issues have not been concluded. At this point, when Iran is using live ammunition against peaceful protesters, and it's very clear that it's, an Iranian diplomat has been sentenced to 20 years in prison for an attempted terrorist attack. Where is the European judiciary and government position on what is going on from a human rights perspective? Why are Ahwazi leaders still under on trial for clearly fictitious charges, and why aren't the tables turning on Iran in a very major visible way? Why has this whole issue kind of not died down? Okay, you had a terrorist operating in Europe on the diplomatic caliber. He's been sentenced to prison. Now the entire regime is using terrorist methods like ammunition against protesters over, oppression and water issues. And what has been the response to all of this?
Unfortunately, the the problem with in Europe at this time is the interpretation of the actions and the word of Ahwazi people. So they interpret our language, our anger, and the way we express ourselves toward the Iranian government, toward the atrocities that we are facing, toward the daily discrimination, and toward the mismanagement of our natural resources and all these violations that happening. The European side misinterpret our view and consider us as kind of radical, and I think this is the problem of understanding, and they don't look at the Iranian practices to see do our action meet what the Iranian state are actually doing. So they just look at us as and compare Iranian state like similar to the European democratic countries, that whoever become had an even radical view, they consider him as okay, terrorist or whatever. But it's a misunderstanding and misinterpretation that Iranian state is not a democratic country, and it's a terrorist country that's killing people is a terrorist act, and the Iranian state currently killing people in the street, and peoples are demonstrating, and demonstration is not illegal. It's a right that has been recognized not only by international law but by the Iranian state itself, and so why European doesn't want to? It could be for other political reasons, and could be they had other interests with the Iranian state, and they don't want to just have I don't know, upset the regime there, and they have so much interest that we are not aware of. I mean, they have investment there, and they try to invest in Iran, and Iran is a country open, ready for investment, and so on the expense of current situation or violation not only against Ahwazis but against other ethnic groups in Iran, the European government tried to keep silent and not to raise the issue. And when to answer to other question regarding where are the other NGOs that support that talk about or advocate for environmental pollution, it's my question as well, because what's the difference between environmental pollution in Brazil, let's say, or other countries, or I don't know about what countries, but there is a big environmental issues happening, and these environmental issues affecting populations and peoples, and we are talking about peoples who have been denied the basic rights of water, and the air pollution and all dust, dust, sand, and yes, pollution. It's kind of related to their work, and they have to raise it. But I'm not sure where is the problem, or maybe they are not interested in Ahwaz and doesn't interest them. Maybe we don't have actually, to be honest, maybe we don't have money to provide to all these NGOs to raise or to raise our issue. And it's not only pure human rights issues and environmental issues. It's just it's connected with politics and what and other agendas. So we are unfortunately lonely in this situation, and I think maybe we should raise through whatever something like this event could raise the issue, and could I mean, whoever write about the issue could maybe do something, and we have to continue promoting and organizing seminars and writing to maybe get their attention as well.
Or anyone here who wants to write is welcome to submit to the Washington Outsider into. We will be happy to share some of these perspectives with our audience as well. Now I kind of want to get back to Ahmed Abali about the whole situation. About the whole situation with the Azerbaijani and the protests there. As you mentioned earlier, there's about 30 million Azerbaijanis in Iran. What's preventing them from essentially, and even those who are with the regime have relatives, families, friends who are outside of that direct system. What's preventing them from essentially saying to the regime, this is it, we're walking away, there's nothing you can do about it, and without us, you collapse, and that's it. And that will solve the entire issue. But the independence or federalism or some other aspect, that will be up to the people to decide. They have the power to simply walk away, turn the tables on the people who are in the minority and who need them. What's the obstacle here?
Well, I think the Azerbaijanis are getting there, first of all. The slogans that we've heard from the streets of Tabriz is one specific recognition of the fact that our ordinary people have recognized that there is absolutely no future within the system that has been running Iranian governments for the last 90 plus years. We've had our own grievance, we've had our own time to express our grievances throughout this 90 years plus. Specifically in 1945, right after World War II, Azerbaijanis in the south have formed an independent, well, semi-independent region under Peshawari's direction, under Peshawari's leadership, sorry, that recognized our language as the official language for our people. We had our own government, our own parliament, and even army and so forth. The agreement between our government in 1946 and Iranian government that we would be able to keep our rights if we don't separate from Iran really was pushed aside after we agreed and after we gave up our arms, our army, and then the Iranian army came in and slaughtered up close to 25,000 people within 3 days. So it is our people the other day expressing their will to have a national government is the continuation of the same government we had in 1945. Of course, after the independence of Republic of Azerbaijan, our people consistently have thought about having our own government as well. I think the people in general, most minorities or ethnic groups in Iran are actually waiting for that opportunity to be active towards setting up their own national government, be it federalism, high degree of federalism, confederalism, or outright independence. The future will tell. But at this point, Reina, forgive me, I like to actually express my gratitude to and also recognize Mr. Jalali Tehrani, who has been for the past years that I followed him. He's been our guest in our television program as well. He's been one of the only handful, maybe, of the Persians that have been reasonable reasonably understanding of ethnic minorities' grievances. As he mentioned, as he said so, this discrimination, institutionalized discrimination, has a history of 90 plus years. But it really picked up a speed after the arrival of Islamic Republic, especially after the war between Iran and Iraq. The Iranian government started implementing anti-ethnic resolutions that were actually set upon to be implemented as soon as possible, specifically against Azerbaijanis and also Arabs. In 1991, I believe, during Rafsanjani's power, Iran's National Security Council came up with the idea of implementing another resolution that they forced upon the governments that followed, was to push in every direction, to push anti-Arab, anti-Turkish or Azerbaijani ideas economically, politically, and culturally upon Azerbaijan and Azerbaijani populated areas and Arab populated areas. So what we see today is actually the result of the intentional policies against ethnic groups in Iran. What you see today is not a result in Ahvaz, is not a result of mismanagement. It is an intentional management of water in a way that they are taking away all the water from Ahwazi area to central Iran. In fact, this was written in Tasnim News. Yesterday, I was reading. Tasnim News is, as you know, is very close to intelligence agencies in Iran. It is, they were quoting environmentalists that what is happening in the rivers that bring water to Ahvaz is intentionally drying up those rivers to put further pressure on Arab population of the region. This is intended to completely dry the region, as the Liberation of France wrote a couple of days ago. The intent is to bring the cultivated land, to transfer the central part of the country, which is Persian populated area, to a fertile land by bringing in water from Ahvaz, and then convert Ahvaz to a desert. In fact, they are converting a populated fertile land to desert, but on the other hand, they're making a desert area in Iran, as they call it, Beheshtabad, or a fertile land, converted to a fertile land, or heaven, as they say, literal translation. Furthermore, I wanted to also add one more thing, as one of our panelists kindly talked about Iran projecting himself in Arab world. Iranian government is using Shia as a tool, Shiism as a tool to further advance their Persian nationalist ideas. Iranian government right now is far more Persian nationalist than the previous government. We can see it in reality. For instance, I come from a Shia family. We always believed that Alawite, for instance, as we have it in Syria, are not really Shia. We consider them, Shiites consider them as a infidel. We also consider Zaydis in Houthis as infidels. But Iran helps them because they use them as a tool to advance their own agenda. In Syria or in Yemen, they use these so-called Shia, as they are not really Shiites, to advance Persian nationalism and Iranian government's own agendas, anti-Israeli agendas, Arab or anti-Saudi Arabian agendas. So we need to be careful in when we characterize this government as Shia versus Sunni. I don't think it's completely correct. It is Persian nationalism using Shia as well against Arab and Sunnis. That's what I like to. I wanted to bring it up, but in general, coming back to your question one more time, what is preventing people from taking concrete steps towards maybe separation or setting up some sort of independent or semi-independent nations? I think it's a matter of fact. It is people are not ready yet. Would they do it in the future? Perhaps yes, perhaps not. We don't know. But the tendency is towards setting up their own national government. Again, be it highly autonomous regions or even independent regions in Iran.
Thank you so much for this input, and you've raised a very interesting point about the nationalism of the current regime. With that, I kind of want to circle back to Mehdi Jalali Tehani and ask him about the issue of the Persian opposition. MK, as I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is not particularly popular in Iran itself. It's mostly a Western. Its success is mostly seen in the West because it's highly organized compared to others and has a very unified message and a very clear way of working with the intelligence agencies, with the high level speakers, and has raised a lot of money, which facilitated this organization still further. The monarchists, they do have a following in Iran, but Reza Pahlavi himself isn't clear whether he's cut out to be a leader of any sort. What about their supporters of a Republican form of governance? Where are their voices in all of this? Why aren't they heard from more often? And anyone who is a pro-Republican form of government should take into account the perspectives of the different regions of the country, at the very least, if not by ethnic groups, then at least by the geographical makeup. So I'm curious, what's the situation with that?
Thank you. But first of all, I should say that Persian oppositions are not organized. They have money. They have media. And the money is huge money, basically. They are very well funded. As I said, Iran International TV is funded by Arab countries, hundreds of millions of dollars. The other TV, Iranian TV, is Manoto. We don't know who funds them, but they also have hundreds of millions of dollars. I believe up to now, from, for example, 3-4 years ago, they have spent at least $500 million on their media and promoting Persian nationalism. Sometimes they have journalists from Kurds, Turks, Arabs, but they're assimilated people. They are Persianized people. So they basically misinterpret the situation. And at the same time, for example, let me give you an example from the previous administration, Trump administration, Mr. Brian Hook. Once he said that Iranian people deserve a ruler like Cyrus the Great for Iran. First of all, that was shocking to me because based on American Revolution, basically the revolution in America was against the rulers in Britain. So then giving power to the people. Why he wishes a ruler in Iran? That was anti-democratic, obviously. And at the same time, he lost right away at least 50% of the Iranians because they don't believe in kind of Cyrus the Great as a national identity or national symbol. But that shows us how they are misinformed and how they suffer lack of understanding about the situation in Iran. And it's going to be very dangerous, as I said before, because civil war could happen. For example, Mr. Obali said many of the Turks, Azerbaijani Turks, they want to have their autonomy. They want to have their own, basically, destination in their hands. So at the same time, Persian medias, even though against the government and the government, both they have their own dialogue, and 50% of the people in Iran are marginalized. They have absolutely no voice. When, for example, in CNN, in different media outlet, international media outlet, they want to have some activists or journalists from Iran to describe the situation. They invite some, for example, Miss Masih Ali Nejad and the other well-known faces. They are Persians. Even though they don't have a bad intention, for example, I don't believe that Ms. Masih Ali Nejad have any bad intention. I really praise her, but they are not insightful about the ethnic issue. Sometimes they're afraid. They have history of separatism. They think, oh, we need to basically maintain the Iranian territorial integrity for our first priority, even more important than human rights. So, and the middlemen who go to the Arab rich people to fund their medias against the government, they are Persians, we know them, and the Arab people, they just know them as opposition figures, so they give money to them. And they think that if they promote kind of like Iranian nationalism, which is not true, it's not Iranian nationalism, it's Persian nationalism, is promoting loyalists. They think that if give money to these kind of people, promoting secularization in Iran, they're gonna have a more stability in the future or smooth transition of power somehow. But actually the result is gonna be exactly the opposite. They promoting Persian nationalism, which is much more dangerous than Iranian Shia ideology. As Mr. Obali said it well, exporting the revolution, which is the main agenda for Iranian regime, is backed by Persian nationalism. Many of the Persians, they saw Qasem Soleimani as a Persian hero, as a kind of country hero. So we are dealing with masters of propaganda. None of the government in the world are masters in propaganda like Iranian regime. They are Ayatollahs. Remember, I am son of Ayatollah. My father was against the revolution, a senior student of the Khomeini, but he was against the revolution. But I was living basically in the clergy community, and I left my community, my religious community. Then I became a kind of nationalist because the opposition group that I was looking for were secular and nationalist. And after that, I realized that the major issue is Persian nationalism, not Islamic ideology, not Shia ideology. That Shia ideology and exporting revolution is based on Persian nationalism, is backed by Persian nationalism. And this situation, we can basically work on it in terms of, for example, if we want to kind of have the stability in the region, we need to kind of re-identify Iranian identity, redefine Iranian identity. Because when you see Arab uprising in the Ahvaz, as Mr. Rahim said, was triggered by the water crisis. But based on their demand and their slogan is an identity protest, is a protest for dignity. And at the same time, when you see people in Tabriz came to the street, that's the same thing. Protest for dignity, for protest for identity. They recognize each other because they are suppressed by Persian nationalism, by medias. They have no voice right now. So they came to the street to show off their power on the street and to basically have voice. But at the same time, it's amazing. Persian medias invites Persians to know what's going on Tabriz. And they say, oh, that's a solidarity and the unification of the whole Iranians and Persian and those kind of things. And they had a slogan praising the Shah, which is completely lying. So we should be aware of the Persian nationalism as a much larger, monstrous phenomena for the future. We have already experienced the Sharia law in Iran, Islamic Revolution. Hopefully, we should not have the experience of the Persian nationalism to know how monstrous it is compared to the Islamic ideology. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Thank
yes.
you.
I wanted to follow up on that regarding the fact that you mentioned that on the one hand you have individuals who are well funded because they know how to play the game and how to appeal to the clueless Arab funders. But on the other hand, you have scattered kind of Iranians who don't know how to organize themselves. Meanwhile, we are seeing a situation where in the US, there are efforts by some groups to kind of build people-to-people ties between Israel and Iranians and maybe Americans and Iranian people, recognizing that the regime does not represent most of the population in any legitimate way. Unfortunately, for various reasons, they're still making the mistake of appealing to a few key famous figures who've made newspapers for various reasons, either for being famous opposition members back in the day, or defecting, or and having stories that made the media, or being promoted by somebody somewhere for whatever reason. And a lot of these people, from what I'm hearing, they are using this opportunity. They're seeing that there are people who are willing to push them, to promote them, and some of them were not necessarily on the same page to begin with. They were not necessarily pro-Israeli efforts. They're certainly not necessarily all that concerned about these internal oppression issues. So how do we get through to the fact that political circles in the U.S. And even to a much less extent to Israel, I think the Israelis get the situation a lot more. But for instance, in Europe and elsewhere, where such efforts are being made, how do we get through to the policymakers, to the people with the political backing, and get them to see the picture differently? What is the best way to share the perspectives and to kind of make them understand that, yes, there are concerns about civil wars, territorial integrity, sovereignty issues, nationalism, not alienating the people with a culture, not insulting, whatever. But the fact is, all of it is kind of a bogus concern if you actually find a way to address these human rights concerns and identity concerns and bring people together instead of further dividing them by alienating everyone who is not 100% on the current trajectory of this Persian nationalists. How do you understand that such efforts that do not bring in all of the voices actually exacerbate the problem and make it less likely for the country to, for the people of Iran to kind of build bridges with the outside world?
Yeah, maybe I am a wrong person to answer this question because of my own trajectory. Basically, after graduation from university, I turned to Iranian community. I turned to Persian language again. So all of my environment is Persian language, and I'm talking to my people. So, and sometimes, many times actually, people in administration, in NGOs, think tanks, ask me to come to their panels, conferences to talk about these issues. And basically, making, giving people some awareness about this situation in Iran. I accept those invitations, but in general, I think it's not my job. My job now is basically concentrating on Iranian people, and this is the situation of Iran in the future, how we kind of manage it. In even, for example, Mr. Obali has a tendency of, like many of Turk Azerbaijanis, to have their own national government, separate from the rest of the Iran. Even for separatists or for federalists like me, our priority is democratization of Iran and distribution of power. Because for separatists, even if they want to divorce from Iran, it should be civilized divorce, not in civil war. So everybody, I believe, has to concentrate on the democratization of Iran. And democratization, by definition, you definitely know, the academic people know, democratization means that giving the access to the people. Mm-hmm. And not democracy. It's different from the term democracy. Access power to the people. So we need distribution of power. We need to kind of fight Persian hegemony, even in the opposition arena. I don't know how to basically inform political decision makers in Europe, in United States about the situation. That's not my job, but I believe that that's necessary.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all the speakers for bringing in these important perspectives. And I've personally learned new things, and came to see things even differently. I've been involved in this for several years now, but the more I listen, the more I learn. And I'm very grateful for you bringing in these perspectives, especially on this issue that is on one hand hot button and very timely, but on the other hand so exceptionally poorly covered and understood, and and presented in such a one-dimensional way that it's as if we had learned all the wrong things about what's going on and have to almost go to the effort of undoing the information that's being presented. And I appreciate these perspectives. I appreciate shedding light on the situation. We at the Washington Outsider will continue to monitor not only the situation in general, but events related to Iran, to democratization. Perhaps that could be that process could be the next topic in the future, and of course the current events. As I mentioned, please stay tuned for the dusk presentation on the water crisis, dealing in depth with the environmental damage and the discussion of ecocide and what can be done about that specifically. on August 7th, and the Washington Outsider will also continue the trajectory of covering the events that get almost no real coverage anywhere else. Thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you all shortly.
Irna, thank you so much for
Thank you.
holding this event, and I wanted to also thank you sincerely for being one of our voices in the past few years that I followed you. You've been great. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you all. I just want to add something that Persian opposition group and the regime, the consecutive Iranian regime, they deserve to be called separatists. We were demanding our rights to be shared with each other, but they are themselves the real separatists. So they want everything to be monopolized and exclusive for themselves. They don't want to distribute the rights, the wealth of the country. And they will be the main people, I mean, not the Iranian people, the Persian society itself, it's a victim of the Iran regime. I'm talking about those who are propagating and promoting the radical centrism in Iran that will contribute maybe to a civil war. We and Ahwazi people are not separatists. We have our historic sovereignty, and we want to reclaim it back. Ahwaz used to be autonomous and sometimes was independent. So we are not separatists. We want our rights back. And Persian themselves are separatists. And we are fighting for a bright future, not only for Ahwazi people, but for everyone in the country. And the wealth, the oil, the gas, and the water in the Ahwaz is not only for Ahwazi people, for all the people in Iran, and even for the regional countries. So that's what I want to say. And thank you for listening to me and giving me this chance. Thank you so much.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rahim, and thank you,
You're welcome.
all the attendees. I appreciate y'all, and I'm very, very proud and very happy to attend and meet in every single one of you. Thank you very much.
I thank you all, and I learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, and hope to see you all soon.
مع السلامة.